morning to everybody who is logged on to the School Education Summit of Chhattisgarh. And it's a great time for all of us to be here today. There is so much happening around us. It started with the COVID-19 hitting all of us. As educationists, as parents, we all thought that, this is probably a 3-month kind of situation, but now it has turned into almost one full academic year and a full academic session. So we are having to deal with that. We are also having to deal with the fact that, school management, promoters, teachers, educationists are all struggling to figure out how to deal with this new normal, because we've been so hardwired with the chalk and talk system that suddenly absorbing the new technologies and understanding how our children, our school children, preschool children, university children, how are they going to be taking in all of this is a challenge. Parents are finding it very, very difficult and challenging as well, because suddenly parents are not just parents, they're also teaching facilitators, they're also friends, they're also counselors. So they're being put in a spot and they have so much to handle right now. And in all of this, we have our new education policy, which comes with all its promises and intricacies, but at the same time, implementing the policy is going to be very critical. So with these opening remarks, I think we'll get into a really exciting session today. But before that, may I quickly ask all our panelists to maybe just give us a quick introduction and their opening remarks of how do they perceive this entire situation, because literally this has happened after 100 years, and in our lifetimes we're looking at this for the first time. So may I please ask Colonel Avinash to start off with an introduction and his feelings about this moment right now.
All right. Good morning to everybody. I am Colonel Avinash Singh. A brief introduction about me is that I joined the army in '85, and I was in the fighting arms called Armored Corps. I was in Skinner's Horse, and for 22 years I spent in the army. My last posting was Baramulla. Uri was under me. So that movie has made Uri quite famous. And during my time, that earthquake, devastating earthquake, had hit that area, Muzaffarabad, Baramulla, Uri, and all that. And after that, I switched on to don the educator's robe, and I've been in Rajkumar College since 2007. I'm heading Rajkumar College since 2016. So that is about me. Now about the topic that we are discussing and the present situation. You see, our generation is a slightly digitally challenged generation. So unfortunately, I feel that the decisions rest with us, but the implications are to be understood by us, or we have to work towards understanding them. So with that backdrop, we were pushed into this fast forward of using these digital platforms for education purposes by this COVID-19. Like online payments came in vogue after demonetization. COVID has pushed the laid back institutions like Rajkumar College towards this line in a very fast forward mode. And we are coping up with it, but there's a lot that can be done in this field. So with that, I leave the stage to others to give their introduction and give their opening remarks, and then we'll come to the brass tacks. Thank you.
Thank you, Colonel Avinash. May I have the opening remarks from Mr. Arup, please? You will, can you unmute yourself?
Sure, sure, it's done. Well, Pallavi, thanks, and good morning to everyone. I think some of our known faces, some of them may not be knowing each other, but still is a wonderful platform to introduce. I'm Arup, and I have come to Chhattisgarh around 3 years back, 2017. As a CEO of Rungta, I took after the Rungta's K-12. as a Chief Executive Officer. Apart from that, I am basically a transformation and educational consultant. I work in Southeast Asia, a greater part of Africa and India. Okay, I'm basically concentrating on the change, dynamics, and transformation in K-12 sector. Thank you.
Great. So, Mr. Arup, what are you seeing of this entire situation? What is your reading of it? Are you able to take in what's going on right now? What are your top thoughts?
Well, I look at, before we start this thing, I look at it very wonderfully, this aspect, that even a small micromolecule can pose such a great threat in which all your warfare, all your nuclear weapon, all your artificial intelligence prostrate in front of a small molecule, okay? And it offers, phenomenal change. And I think we used to study a lot of project-based learning. I think this situation will lead you to learn phenomenon-based learning.
Thank you. I think that's a great way to enter the situation with a very positive and, welcoming mindset to the change that we're looking at, because I think it is an inflection point in the education system. So yes, thank you, Mr. Arup. Moving on to Dr. Shruti, can you kindly introduce yourself and your opening remarks?
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Elets, for organizing such a wonderful summit. I think in Chhattisgarh, we are really looking forward for Elets interaction, because I really feel that this is the interaction and this is the panel that is coveted, and here a lot of dynamism goes on. Every year it comes, and I congratulate Elets for this. It's good to see the panelists, and it's good to, I believe that it is going to be a wonderful session around. I have been heading, I think it's over 2 decades as a founder principal, Brilliant Public School. So it is a lovely journey. I hail from Rajasthan, Udaipur, and I think it's wonderful to begin in this part of the country, because here education has lots and lots to work on.
Right.
And I see it as more of an opportunity. As far as this time of pandemic is concerned, yes, it has fast forwarded us into this journey. I think it is something, I see it more as an opportunity, and I see it more as a possibility wherein everything and everybody is into a learning mode. Each teacher is much more receptive. Each staff is into learning, and each student is into hyper learning. And this is the time wherein all our children have sort of become our teachers in terms of technology teaching. So I see it as more of a role changer and more of as a learning opportunity. Yes, that's how I perceive it, and I'm looking forward to it more positively.
Lovely. Thank you, Dr. Shruti. So we'd like to welcome Amul Arora. Hi, Amul. Welcome, and a quick introduction and your opening thoughts.
Yeah, I run a chain of schools, preschools, primary schools, and middle schools. We have about 650 branches across India, Nepal, and Bangladesh. So it's, yes, COVID has changed things irreversibly, I believe. We've always been talking about technology, and EdTech has been the next big thing, but it was always like a perennial bridesmaid, because nothing was really happening. It was always the next big thing, and we've been seeing that for nearly 18 years now, using technology in our classrooms, but it's never changed the core how education should be. And also, we've always been talking about how education is now today irrelevant to the needs of the 21st century workplace. What we are teaching today is basically irrelevant and doesn't really help, except for grades. And we're all focused in our school system on one, which is the entrance to the college examinations. That's our whole system is designed according to that, not to prepare children for life. No matter what our brochures and websites say, it's all focused on their class 12th examination. So I think this is a change which was much required. I think the resistance to adoption of technology, which was going to be the game changer, was at every level: school managements, principals, teachers, parents, students. I think that's been overcome, and I don't see it as a replacement for the school system, but I see it as a tool which was never ever properly used in the school system, which should have been used. And now we're seeing benefits of certain parts of it. We're realizing that certain things are better done through technology as opposed to the actual classroom, which may be 10 or 15%. But still, there are good things which I believe will take up, everybody's going to take up, and it's never going to be a return to normal now. yes, the current situation is especially challenging, especially for schools because of the school fee. Uh, Majority of parents are not paying, especially in schools where they have a choice. If the parents feel that if I don't pay the fee, my child gets kicked out, I'll not get admission back in this school, those schools are still seeing a higher propensity of parents to pay. But if it is a school where parents know that क्या होगा 6 महीने बाद join कर लेंगे, or they're expecting a waiver of fee after some months, or they think after 6-8 months I'll join some other school. So in areas where there's a lot of competition among schools, hardly 10 to 15% of parents are paying the fee. So now schools are a bigger challenge. They're supposed to make their teachers learn, adapt to this new technology, work from home. Teachers are working while they are parents of their own children as well. They have to invest in hardware and learning technologies, broadband, and all this, and are not getting paid because parents are not paying fee.
Right, right.
Sad thing is a lot of parents who have the ability to pay. I've seen government officials, children not the fees not coming. That's sad. There was a parent we called up. We said, "So why aren't you paying the fees? What do you do?" He said, "I'm a chemist." How does a chemist face problems these days in paying fee? How does government employees? Why are they facing problems in paying fees these days? They are getting their salaries. Yeah. So the sad thing in this situation is, whereas schools are expected to innovate and learn and create new things, we have a vast majority of people who are not who are taking advantage of the situation. Some people we understand are genuinely affected, and schools are, I'm sure, are empathetic about that.
Right.
Vast majority of parents today are taking advantage of this, and they're going to politicians who are hungry for visibility and populism, and as a result, it's really a sad situation for schools right now. And the budget private schools are really struggling right now, and I'm seeing already a lot of schools have closed down across the country, which is very.
So we'll come back to a few more deeper issues. We're just getting started, and Amol, I think you've opened up a lot of it's actually a Pandora's box situation right now, because there are a lot of aspects in various ways which are pulling us, as far as this discussion is concerned. But let me come back to you. And we have our final panelist, Dr. Ashokan.
Yes.
Dr. Ashokan,
good morning.
yes, welcome. Yes.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah. Good morning. I'm Dr. Ashokan. Basically, I'm from Kerala, and I'm very new to Chhattisgarh. Almost 1.5 years I'm working here in DPS Raigad as a principal here. Regarding this issue, which is present COVID pandemic, which changed our teachers, especially when I say about teachers, they changed all on a sudden, where the change could have been happening after 10 or 15 or 20 more years, which happened all on a sudden. Why I'm saying is like that, after this COVID pandemic or during this COVID pandemic, a rickshaw driver can wear a mask and he can continue with his work. A shopkeeper can wear a mask and he can continue with the same work. But for a teacher, it is not possible to wear a mask and to continue the work. So definitely they have changed a lot. And as the first panelist said, we are born on the time of not the time of information technology. So almost all the teachers of the present, other than the youngsters who came to this field recently, most of the teachers are not that techno savvy to update with the technology. So definitely they will be finding it difficult with this kind of technology. Definitely, one more thing I wanted to add to this is the NEP which came recently, which helps us in another way, where the cry was in the education field for a longer period of time. Like there is a certificate making examination system which was prevailed, and from that a mind making education system is coming up. So we are looking to it, how it will be introduced and how it will be working forward. So these are the curiosities from my side. So we'll continue with the later part of it. Thank you for this introduction session.
Thank you, Dr. Ashokan. So a quickly introduction about myself before we get into this. I'm Dr. Pallavi Rao Chaturvedi from the ISECT group of universities. We run 5 private universities across the country. We also run a chain of preschools called the Brainy Bear Preschools. So we kind of see the entire gamut of education, the way it's playing out. I run a parenting channel called Get Set Parent with Pallavi, and I really hear the angst of parents and what's going on through their minds right now. So, so moving deeper into our topic for today, I'd like to ask Colonel Avinash, coming back to him. One of the things that the National Education Policy actually says is that we are moving from the stress on reach and accessibility to good quality education. At the same time, the policy also says we are trying to move from an 18%, from the GR that we have today to almost a 50% GR. And given the Chhattisgarh perspective, how are you really seeing, as a school promoter, as how are you seeing this, taking GR up at the same time bringing in all those qualitative aspects that the policy talks about? And how can school managements really move towards building world-class learning, meeting those global standards? What are your thoughts on this?
All right. So I am slightly a traditionally minded person. And as I see things, it is quite easy to implement all the technology by placing the technology, by placing the HR over there and implementing it, say, in a standalone mode for an institution like Rajkumar College or any such institution. But at the moment, you've asked me a question about Chhattisgarh. Now, I'll tell you something. Our president is one of the senior politicians of Chhattisgarh, Mr. T.S. Singh. And he is, with him, I have roamed around the extremely backward areas of Chhattisgarh. You will not believe that simple addition, simple alphabets of, say, vernacular language, students of 5th, 6th, 7th are not able to do in the rural areas. We get certain children, the government-sponsored children in our school, and when they come in 6th class, their level is not more than, say, class 2, class 3. The divide, unfortunately, with this stress on technology is widening. That's the worrying aspect as far as the state level is concerned. I'm not talking about Rajkumar College as such, because here I can manage. But at the state level, the divide due to non-accessibility of teachers and teaching aids, and when I say teaching aids, it is an all-encompassing term, is widening. Today in the newspapers, it was there that 27% across India, 27% of the students are not having access to data and electricity. Now, barely 50% students have access to proper online education gadgets, and barely, say, 15 to 20% of the students have access to good quality online education. So these are the worrying aspects, and the government, I feel, should be concentrating in somehow bridging this gap. The gap which is there in the rural sector or the not so organized sectors and these private schools which are there. Now, everyone is trying to target the private schools by saying, some time back, Amul was mentioning this, that the teachers, the parents are not paying their fees and all that, because the private schools are being branded as blood-sucking, money-making organizations.
Yes.
But the fact remains that the only quality education in the country is being provided by the private schools. And I can vouch for it because the bulk of the students of the bureaucracy and the politicians are in my school, at least in Raipur. I'm in the capital. So what happens is that you can keep cursing the private schools, but that is not going to solve anything. Unless and until we get the government sector schools to come up a little bit and come to some kind of a meeting ground, this digital divide is going to remain. Delhi is one state which I'm told, I'm not having any access to, physical access to this claim that they are making. But I'm told that Delhi government schools have been improved quite a bit in the last 3-4 years. I cannot sort of comment on that, but I've heard it. So that is my worrying factor as far as this new education policy and all these things are concerned. We can keep using jargons like ICT, AI, sustainable development goals, all these things till the cows come home. unless and until we have a level playing field for the rural and the developed areas, this digital divide is going to remain. That's my take.
Right. Yeah, thank you, Colonel Avinash. And I think one of the, I think you're absolutely right, because when you talk about a policy, when you talk about the country at large, it cannot, we cannot segment private and rural. We will need to look at it, at large. And that's how these goals of, having a country moving to the next realm of education is going to be, coming out. So thank you for your thoughts. I'd like to ask, Mr. Arup Mukhopadhyay now. One of the other divides that we are seeing is on how to bring teachers up to speed, right? So this is a massive shift. So like I began, initially, we've been so hardwired. We've all grown up, our parents have grown up, our kids are studying in the system, which is very, chalk and talk oriented. And now we are looking at overnight asking them to change their methods of teaching. We're looking at, asking them to interact with children in a different way. And even once schools, come back to, a staggered kind of classroom versus technology blend, how do you see teachers coping with it? And what are your thoughts on this? How, even the NEP mentions a lot of training programs for teachers at every level. So your thoughts on teacher reskilling and upskilling?
Well, thanks. Thanks, Pallavi. So, Pallavi, if you look at, it's all, it's a wonderful, the topic which Elets has taken. So I appreciate that, It's the future-proofing, future-proofing of next generation school ecosystem, learning ecosystem, by leveraging innovation and reskilling. Is appreciable, but I have strong reservation of using the word, proofing. In this century, when we live it is very, very tough to proof anything. I again told you the small micromolecule has changed the world, make this world to come to a standstill. So proofing, the word need to be forgotten. It's not, the word which should be mostly used is adaptive. How quickly you can adapt to a situation and respond. So that's the angle we need to look at. So, of course, I think traditional education system has yielded. We are all product of our traditional education system. And I remember, it's decades back when I met a guy and I tried to implement all the kind of a next generation learning, progressive education. The gentleman asked me that, why do we need it? We are all doing very well. And the country's, think tank, which is worldwide recognized and appreciated, that why we need to change. So from that type of thought, if you look at, changing the next generation schools ecosystem. See, this word, the phrase has been used heavily and with a very little understanding in our education context. Next generation education ecosystem or learning ecosystem, if you really like to ask, we say that it like to replace the learning and education and moving towards a kind of a learning which is called deeper learning, and replacing the classrooms, staggering kind of a classroom, standardized test, and the same learning, taking same thing learned by all the students. So it's a very, very replicable model. And we realized, all of us realized, this model is not going to help us to sail through 21st and 22nd century. And that has been proved by the worldwide PISA result, PISA, which measured 15 years old children of a particular country's achievement every 3 years to help the country to develop their educational practices and re-engineering the practices. And as I think many of us know, that our performance have been dismal performance. 74 countries participated and our rank was 72. Okay. So keeping in mind, if you look at, it's not only the technology which plays an important role. What plays the important role? It's the culture. The important role which is playing is, it's a personalized learning. If you wanted to replace this traditional educational policy, standardized test-based, you need to have three basic important things. One is personalized learning. As soon as I say personalized learning, it's conceived, is perceived as personal attention, which is not. Personalized learning, you look at the individual interest of the child, learning and the pace of learning. Okay, it's not difficult to do it. Yesterday I was doing similar kind of workshop for the students for the principals of Nigeria, and they told we don't have a resource. How can we innovate? Innovation does not require a resource. It requires a culture. It requires a mindset. So my guy coming to the first was the personalized learning. Second, what you require is the flexibility. Our structure is so rigid. Coming out of that rigidity of the structure takes a lot of time. To the mindset of the teachers. Third is that needs to be interactive. If the education system can address the three things, one is personalized learning. It does not mean that you teach only one child. Because people will say, I have 50 students in my class, how can I teach? It's not. You need to map the learning speed, learning interest, and how the child learns. Right. And the second is the flexibility. You don't need to make everybody pass in the month of December. The students, a grouping of the students takes time to learn. And third point comes interactive. We do not create an atmosphere in the classroom to participate and interact. If you question in our society, you are looked at that you are challenging and you have a dissent. Questioning itself is looked at as a negative perspective. So in our classroom, the teachers do not encourage the children to come out and speak. And as a result of this thing, most of our classroom is remained four-walled classroom. What has changed over the years? If you look at, the classrooms have become glossy. The furnitures become very, very trendy. If you look at, the blackboard has been replaced by the smart board, but the classroom has not changed. What is required? The classroom as a biological phenomenon, the classroom needs to change if we need to really address of the children issue of 21st and 22nd century. Herein lies the role of the teachers. Okay? Right. So the teacher would be playing a very, very important role. Look at our teachers training. Teachers training curriculum, which has not changed for over the years. We still use the word pedagogy, which has been gone for 20 years back. The teachers training has completely changed. It has come in the national education policy, the integrated teachers training of 4 years. Yes. You really aim and vision to produce a teacher. Our neighboring country, Sri Lanka, people take a pride to speak that I'm a teacher, because you determine whether you like to be a teacher when you pass your 10+2 and you go to a 4-year degree college and you come out as a teacher. And most of the teachers are holding a bachelor's degree. For teaching a class 12 A level, you don't need to be a master's. You only waste the national resources. You can go for a master if you have a plan for a research. So I think we need to definitely look at the model of our teachers' empowerment, teachers' training, and continuous professional development. Yes. Continuous professional development is a missing word in our system. If you ask a teacher to train, the teacher feel that I have not been knowing enough. Is not that. Everything is changing. My last point, technology can only come to assist a teacher. Technology should not be taking place of designing the educational or the instructional design. Smart board has replaced the role of the teachers. Some of the companies have come up with a software, with a program, with the module, which completely replacing the teacher. Teacher cannot be replaced. That's why our school education is basically a hands-on learning. When it's a hands-on learning, it cannot be given remotely because there is a huge amount of learning loss. 22 million of our Indian children is out of school, and the post-pandemic, it is going to be 50 lakhs of children. But Anmol was saying that the closure of the school, I am working with around 16 schools which have been closed. Even in Chhattisgarh, we have a school closed. Okay. So we need to look at in a greater way the culture, teachers training, and that how the curriculum and the assessment. We talk about assessment of learning. Assessment of learning is a gone phase. We call it assessment for learning. You assessment for learning, because when you assess, you make the learning more productive, make the learning more useful. So assessment of learning still we are continuing, which is a wrong aspect and which does not solidify and concentrate the learning. So unless and until we think deeply, technology cannot replace, technology cannot sell to a 21st, 22nd century's education. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Arup. I think you brought on very interesting points. And I think as far as teacher development goes, somewhere our center, our states, our school managements have to start allocating increased budgets for teacher training, because as we know, this is not going to happen and it is going to be continuous professional development. So we will need budget.
It's a CPD. There will be allocated budget for the CPD. It's a compulsory allocated budget.
And I really hope now that the GDP investment on education is going up from 1.6 to 6%, there will be earmarked budget for teacher training specifically, and that will, I think, help us in a great way. So thank you for your comments. I'll now like to speak to Dr. Shruti. Dr. Shruti, one of the points that Mr. Arup very nicely brought out was on flexibility. And in fact, if you look at the new system, it actually promises to move away from the rigidity and the rote learning and the content heavy system. And it actually says it's going to be very multifaceted. Children in grade 9 can choose subjects, and nobody is going to be tied down to life based on decisions made when you're 14 years old. They're also talking about a lot of learner-centered education, deeper education, problem-solving skills, critical reasoning skills. So moving away from India being criticized for being a very rote learning, based education system, we're talking about all of these new things. So putting the student at the center, Dr. Shruti, how do you really think, we are going to ready ourselves for the future, because this session is about future readiness. How are we going to ready ourselves to bring this whole learner-centered approach into our classrooms, into our schools?
Right. So I think it was an interesting lead by Dr. Arup, and the way he just put up on that flexibility note. I think children were always in the center. And when we talk about children in school education, it is always about children. Of course, in our system of education, we have made that system more on teacher-led instruction-based model, which is something that is the reason why we are looking out for change. And when we talk about one of our top scientists of India, K. Kasturi Rangan sir, who has actually made a blueprint plan for the next decade to find out ways and means to make it more meaningful, I welcome it. And I really feel this was the much needed change that we are looking out for. Here, I really look into the personalized learning patterns as more of student-centered learning. I also would like to quote goal number 4 of Sustainable Developmental Goals of UN, because it really talks about, apart from all other things related to gender and everywhere in primary and secondary, it talks about 2 most important points. One being relevance of education and the other being effective learning. So I think both these 2 points seem to be really important today when we talk about learner-centered education. Because if we do not give as a country, as a system, an education that is relevant to the child and an education which is very effective towards the learning growth of the child, I think this is something that is going to bring us together into making education more meaningful for our children. So what I see it as being the change, what we really need to see. So we have been doing a number of things related to it, and we really want our children to understand that it is their learning. We need to make learning as a celebration. They need to make continuous, regular learning as a hobby for them. So if we are able to inculcate that kind of an ecosystem, that kind of an environment into the school system, where learning in itself is celebrated and the process in itself is celebrated, and it is not just about assessing it by the year end or something. Yes, assessment in terms of assessment as learning, and assessment of learning, and assessment for learning. So that is something that is really needed. So when we talk about assessment for the reason of learning, it certainly becomes the celebration of the process in itself. I would also like to bring around something that is so unique and really, really important for every educator when we talk about education, and when we talk about student in its center. This is something that is Bloom's taxonomy that we have been doing and working since long. And when we talk about Bloom's taxonomy and we talk about its highest level, and its highest level wherein we are talking about creation, and that's what I think Prime Minister of India also focuses on. We are wanting children to become entrepreneurs, and we really want them to create, and we want them to think out of the box, and we really want them to think that is not something that is routine. I think it is all about bringing into a system wherein the child is into the pattern of understanding that what the child really possesses. And when that is mapped into a proper LMS, learning management systems, and talent management systems, this is something that really each school, each progressive school really needs to look into. Because this talent management system and learning management system is what is going to map our system towards the student as into the center, because we will be able to ensure that the child gets enough kind of exposures to what he or she really needs at a particular point of time of learning. So when that kind of a system really gets into wherein what kind of credits you get when there is a certain time spent on a system. So like we just passed onto Microsoft Teams during this pandemic times. So whatever time we spent on Microsoft, it was all credited. If at all this system is put into school systems, and there is a credit given to a certain time given towards one's learning, the child would be more interested. We need to allow children to question. We need to allow the children to seek their own answers. Ready-made answers and only one correct answer, that kind of atmosphere needs to be challenged, and needs to be challenged really, really strongly. So we need to make sure that children are more so integrated into their own learning, interested in their own learning. They want to come out of their own, just a sheer fear of a percentage being shown by the year end that I'm so and so, and with a 50% or a 60%, and putting oneself into a shame is not something that we really are looking forward in the next generation. We want the children to become owners of their own learning. And for that matter, I really want each and every educator to explore. This is the time, I think people say nature and signatures don't change, but I think pandemic has really proven us the other way around. So I really want all the teachers to change into that mindset. They're already doing it and they're working really hard on that. And this is this sort of a time wherein every system has upscaled and everyone has upgraded. If at all you really wanted to teach your teachers such a lot of technology, it would have taken an effort of almost 2 years or more than that. What they have almost learned within a fortnight maybe. So this is something that is something we have developed as an adversity quotient. And during this time, I think this emotional and the academic intelligence both has got us together into bringing into this kind of a time. So I really want our children to develop on flexibility, of course. We really want the children to develop on entrepreneurship skills. We really want them to develop and become sort of lifelong learners. Yeah. Becoming optimistic is something that is really needed. Those 4 skills of creative thinking and communication skills, the intrapersonal and interpersonal skills are really, really needed. Yeah. I happen to move around to this London's Bed Fair, which is all about training and technology, and the way technology is playing wonders with it. I think it is all about how we can blend this education together. I think blending is one of the key words. Be it synchronous, asynchronous, it really doesn't matter much, but blending is the key word, and it has busted the myth that technology will be able to overtake the teachers. No, I think the technology will just bring the children into the center. That personalized learning system will be more into it. Yeah. So I really see it more as this blending, which is going to make learning more happier. Because in the introductory session also, Sir was telling, it should be more happening and happy schools. So yes. This is something that I see as a reality within the coming, I think within a decade, within a coming couple of years. Because if at all we really wish to make it happier, it has to be with the child in the center. So that's how I would like to see it, through blended learning and a lot of hybrid way of working.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
Thank you, Dr. Shruti. In fact, I think what you pointed out two very interesting things. One is to make learning enjoyable for the children, and I think that's one of the core facets at every level of education that we need to try and figure out how to make education more enjoyable. And the second thing you spoke about was, when we started off this topic, is rote learning versus innovation. I think the entire compulsory vocational education, which is going to come up from the middle schools, will be very interesting to see, how students actually start getting their hands dirty. And we've always spoken about learning while doing, and it's finally something that we will probably start seeing in the future. So thank you, Dr. Shruti. I'd like to move to Amul now, Amul Arora. So Amul, you could unmute. I'd also like to request all the panelists who are not speaking to kindly mute. There is some disturbance. So Amul, you run a large chain of preschools. And when we talk about leveraging the policy for the future, when we talk about future proofing, future readiness, I think one of the exciting facets we can look forward to is, the policy recognizing that 0 to 8 is a very critical phase in lifelong learning and, brain development foundation for the rest of the life of, the children and their school going years. So, so I wanted to get your thoughts in about this entire ECCE framework and the, foundation learning and numeracy. So can you tell, our viewers more about ECCE? How do you see it as a positive step for preschools, grade 1, grade 2, and a little bit about the FLN as well?
Yes, thank you. I think it's good to be finally noticed. Otherwise, early childhood was always LKG and UKG. So the preschools and play schools were somehow always were orphaned between the Ministry of Women and Child Development and the HRD Minister. We never knew where we fit and who we have to look up to, who do we speak to. So it's good to be acknowledged. But I think also, a lot of people have this question about this 5 plus 3 plus 3 plus 4 and how will it work? Will we have to split up our schools into different schools? I think it's going to be more of a philosophical and a curriculum divide, because practically you cannot have 5 years of early childhood education. Some people are saying, aapka to bahut fayda ho gaya, aapko to second tak play school. Play schools, because we're not equipped to handle a UKG child or first and second grade. So I think infrastructurally things would remain the same, because our cities are designed like that. Either you have a preschool which is in a neighborhood house, or you have a formal school which is a K-12 school. So I don't think that's going to change. But the approach that is going to change. Right now we have one holistic approach to teaching learning, which starts from like 10 plus 2, right? 10 and then 2. So everybody follows a kind of a gradual way of learning. But now they're introducing like the key stages of what UK has, and that's good. I mean, at least you have some levels of how you're going to children progress. So I think the approach to 2 years and below is going to be different from 3 onwards. It's going to be a more play way, more mother tongue driven approach. The good thing also I've seen the government says, even today also, when we have a curriculum from before grade 8, it's mostly recommended. I mean, schools have the flexibility to not follow NCERT, even if they follow the CBSE curriculum. If they want to innovate, there's enough scope for that. So I hope that freedom continues in curriculum, because you don't want to, I hope we don't end up, institutionalizing the whole system into just like the problem that higher education colleges face, where they have the same examination, same lectures. There's no difference between one college and the other, one private college and the other. They're just following, it's exactly the same. So I hope that differentiation is allowed, because every preschool, every early childhood center can have their own philosophy of how they teach, and every parent can choose what expectations they have for their children, and that matchmaking that freedom should be with the parents and not regimented by the government. I hope that's going to continue, and I hope. But also when I see words like holistic development, all-round development, I don't know what they mean when it comes to practical implementation, because that's where the government tends to lack. So I hope the good thing is that the private sector has been engaged in these sectors. We have been engaging with the governments in this, and I hope that will continue, because ultimately what is going to be implemented at the ground level has to be a practical approach, considering how schools are right now, how preschools are right now, what kind of buildings we have, what kind of infrastructure we have. So a lot of people are worried that are they expecting schools to split up into the way US has, where they have daycares, then they have the kindergarten schools, they have the elementary schools, they have middle schools, and they have high schools. So I don't think that's going to be a fair, because this is mostly a document which is created in theoretical exercise done in an office in Delhi. So when it comes to practical implementations, I want to get that out of the way. It's not, but what is going to happen is at least the approach to teaching learning will be different. Each category will have their own philosophy of how learning should be, and that's a good sign. I think that's, instead of putting the whole 10+2 under one segment, one approach of now it's Ministry of Education, at least we'll have departments thinking about each sector differently, and that's a good sign.
Right, right. So yeah, thank you, Amol. And I think this, while we will have our regional differences, I'm actually looking forward to the creation of this NCPF ECCE, which will be the framework, which will kind of give us the outline and allow regional differences to actually come in within this entire framework. So yeah, that's still a document for us to wait and
the
watch.
center has clarified especially when the language thing came up, there was a huge hullabaloo about, are you going to impose Hindi? Is this a Hindi, nationalification of Hindi? That's the agenda. So I think quickly the government was hands off and says, and education has always been a concurrent subject, which means that the state and center both have a say in it. And this is something, the early childhood education is a sensitive matter for states. Even today, if you run a primary school, you don't need to have any approval from the CBSE or central government. So early childhood education, primary education has always been with the states. I don't think the center is going to try and take some autonomy from that. The autonomy will remain with the states, and states will actually start understanding and making their own frameworks within the broader ECE framework and the NEP. I think every state, even Maharashtra right now as we speak today, is having a discussion with private players on what's your understanding of NEP and how it is to be implemented in Maharashtra.
Yes.
I hope different states start doing it at their own level. And that's a good sign. I mean, at least we know, because it's a good sign for governments to say, hey, I don't know this. You guys are working day in, day out with children. What's your thoughts on this? And that's always welcome. Ultimately, as ma'am said, it's always about the children at the end of the day. So if your heart is in the right place and everyone's heart is in the right place, it's about the children. It's not about mera dhanda band ho jayega ya mere pet pe laat padega. That should not be the case. It should be about the children. And as long as we keep that in mind, I think things will work out.
Yeah. Thank you, Amol. Thank you so much. And I think that's a great idea that, what Maharashtra has started to do, and maybe Elets can, take up these meetings of private players with the government to try and see how to really keep the child at the center and, deliver justice on what we all intend to do. Thank you, Amol. I'll finally move on to Dr. Ashokan. And I want to touch upon assessments a little deeper, Dr. Ashokan, because, we are also looking at a drastic change in how assessments are going to happen in the future. And, we're not just going to be testing what the child remembers, but we're probably, what Parak is the new system under which assessments will happen. Which, I think the system aims to test deeper understanding and conceptual learning, in the new assessment system. So how do you see this actually panning out? What are the challenges in migrating to a new assessment system? And what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, once again, it's good afternoon, I think now, all of you. We'll come back to this. Regarding all these issues, whatever we have discussed, we can think about 2-3 points, mainly. First, you asked me just to tell about the assessment part. So before that, I just want to tell you something about a training part of it, because who is the person doing assessment? It is the teacher. And at present, our teachers are capable of doing proper assessment? We haven't given proper training for them to do the assessment. Why I'm saying is this: they are capable of teaching. They are capable of understanding the child's emotion, and this all round. Is it audible, Ms. Pallavi? Ms. Pallavi?
Yes, I can hear. We can hear you clearly. Please proceed.
Yeah. So okay. Your expressions, I understood that it is something.
No, my laptop was running out of charge.
Right.
Thanks.
So what I wanted to tell you is that in the area of teacher training, when I came to Chhattisgarh, mostly I have seen there are lots of training institutes are there in Chhattisgarh, but I haven't seen very low number of attendance in this kind of B.Ed colleges. And where these people are studying actually, they are working somewhere, they are learning somewhere, but the problem is that they are not getting the proper education. The training is not happening properly. They are just completing their course and they are getting their certificate and they are coming to the schools. Even some of these teachers, when they are coming to schools, when they are interviewing these people, they are not able to understand what are the basics of assessment. No idea of measurement and evaluation, no idea of follow-up. So what is remediation? So these kind of things are not at all aware for these people. Then in that case, whichever be the system of assessment, whether it is PIREC or CCU or whatever it is, how these people will be able to assess. So the first area we need to clarify, we need to develop is that the teacher training institute should look after properly to train their teachers. So the trained teachers are just coming for their job and they are completing their job and they are busy with their tuition classes outside.
Dr. Ashokan, you're on mute. Yeah.
Sorry for the interference. Yeah. So these people are going for private tuitions and definitely these children are going to these tuition classes. So proper evaluation in the class is not happening, which affects the proper education. And as Mr. Arub said about the professional development, and teachers are getting some kind of professional development sessions and orientations, but most of the teachers are sitting as the passive listeners, not at all worried about what the speaker is giving there. Because most of these teachers are thinking that they are super teachers and they are able to do everything. Even I have seen some people who are saying that give me any subject I will teach. And in this present scenario of education, how a particular person can teach every subject. So this is the basic problems which lives. As I am a person dealing with the parents, students and teachers directly as a principal of the school, I can understand that most of the students need marks and the parents need marks and the teacher are bound to give marks. Otherwise, management will question the teachers. So when this system is going on, what is the use of evaluation? So we need to start from the basic. The reconstruction should start from the basic, where the child should learn based on the child's space. The classroom is not the right place for a proper education. That is not understood yet. So this is what I told you in the introductory speech. There should be a man-making education. We need to understand who the child is in the class. It is just like the story which says about the assessing the animals, like the animal school, like monkeys and the fishes and the crocodiles and elephants are standing together and asking them to climb on a tree. And the first one climbs on the top will be the topper. So this is just like our classroom is having differently talented people in the class and we are just giving the test of the rote memorization. Yeah. And this kind of assessment will not give proper results for our education system. And one more thing is that whichever system comes there for assessment, our teachers should be able to execute this assessment properly. So there comes the need of artificial intelligence and the kind of things, the open-ended questions which comes to the child. They will be able to answer it more precisely and the answers should be evaluated properly with the help of the technology, by which we will be able to assess a little more accurately the students. So definitely by that, so in inculcating this kind of thing to education, definitely will improve the standards. But at the same time, I have a worry also, the classrooms, one good thing was happening that the teacher is able to understand the emotional and the social part of the child, whereas the technology will not be able to understand that part. Mostly the technology will be able to give the data, child will be able to grasp the data around the life, wherever the child goes, from the classroom, from the museums or the home or outside the peer group, library. So many options are there for the child to learn according to individual pace. But yes, the problem is that only by the data, only by getting a certificate, the problem is not solved. The emotional all-round development means the emotional side is there, and at the same time there is a physical development. When technology intervenes, for the most of the time the child is getting seated somewhere, looking into the computer, mobile phone, and definitely the obesity and that kind of problems are coming. So we are very sure that it will affect the child's health definitely. So what I wanted to tell you is that the system should not replace the school, as one of our panelists was saying. At the same time, this school system should prevail. Technology should creep inside, and we need to have a good combination. That is why the word ecosystem comes there, I think. So it is not harming any of the other member in the ecosystem. So definitely the child should be the center of education. At the same time, each element of the ecosystem should be able to contribute to the child. So that should be our aim. Yeah, over to you, Pallavi.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Ashokan. I think you've put forth a lot of great points on assessment, and especially that every learner learns at an individual pace. So like we're all talking about, the challenge is going to be in a country like ours, with the population like ours, how we are going to kind of take on this factor in this individuality of our children. So I think we have run out of time. Each of these subjects are so deep, we can, discuss it for hours, but we've really run out of time. But I want to actually get a closing comment from each of the panelists on what are you looking forward to the most in going back, to the drawing board and re-envisioning your school, your institution, because we have all, promoters of schools here. So coming back to, Colonel Avinash, what is the one thing you're most excited about?
I would like to caution everybody about overuse of technology also. You cannot replace teachers. That should be the bottom line. However, we have to concentrate both on the HR, that is the teachers, and the technology, make a nice blend of the two, like an ecosystem which one complements to other, so that it's a cycle. We can't have one devoid of another. That's my take on the whole subject. Because without teachers, schooling is nothing. Schooling is more of a social phenomenon. Academics is just a part of it. And that is where the teachers come in. All right. So that's my take.
Thank you so much, Colonel Avinash. We've got a great lot of inputs from you. Thank you. Moving to Mr. Arup, your closing thoughts and the one thing you're most excited about.
Well, I mean, see, I look at, if I look at, see, our education system has been heavily loaded with examination meritocracy, okay? A nation to develop, a nation to prosper, you really need to move from examination meritocracy to talent meritocracy. Unless you are moving from examination meritocracy to talent meritocracy or bringing the gap, you will not be able to prosper as a developed nation. And my thought, I'd be always doing, which I think a large world could understand, that at this Southeast Asia, the Asian part, I mean, of course, Eastern Asia has been performing extremely well, East Asian countries, okay? And being that academic excellence, okay, that has been the buzzword in the world, okay? But now, if the positive education has to survive, I think that academic excellence need to balance with the wellness of the children. The wellness of the children is missing in our education system. Unless and until we bridge the gap between academic excellence and wellness, we'll be failing to achieve the positive education, and which is the need of the hour.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Arup, for your thoughts. Moving to Dr. Shruti, the one thing you are looking forward to.
I think it is something that is not just about the one thing, but the one thing that we are really looking into is the learner. So when in a time where self-driven cars will become a basic commonality within a decade, I think we need to make sure that the technology is well adopted and the technology is made sure that it is into the center of learning and in a blended way. Yes, because value education is brought in by the teacher. Teacher training has to be taken care. I really want my children to develop them on their I skills and the we skills and I will skills. You know, these three skills are something that these children will need to make sure that they possess what they really want to do and they can imagine beyond what is possible. I wish to give them a world of possibilities. I wish to make sure that they need to possess certain qualities on which they can make their life more fruitful and worthwhile. So this is something that I dream of for the students and the children of my
Lovely.
state.
Thank you, Dr. Shruti. Thank you so much. Moving to Amul Arora, what about you?
I think the good thing that's happened is technology has suddenly entered the education system the way it should. I believe that those barriers, the monopoly that schools had over education and learning is broken now. And this insecurity is good for us as schools because now we are forced to compete with the YouTube, we are forced to compete with the Byju's, and we are forced to, if we don't do it, we don't survive. And parents are now sitting at home are realizing that maybe life skills are more important than learning when Harappa civilization was actually, which years it happened. So I think it's going to be a total dynamic shift. And the good thing is at the end of the day, the child is going to benefit because now people are at least thinking for the child's perspective that if the child is learning how to repair a bicycle at home, that's a really good skill to have rather than again learning something which is irrelevant knowledge which you can search on a phone. So this change that has happened, I think is for the good, and that's where, so we'll never go back to the old way of learning. And that thought keeps coming to me. It's somebody else said this, that technology should not replace a teacher, but if a teacher can be replaced by technology, then probably she deserves to be replaced by technology. If you're so bad as a teacher that a computer screen is doing a better job than you, then you have no space. So I think it's good for everybody to be uncomfortable. To be, that status quo has changed, and I'm happy with that. And that's because children deserve that. We cannot keep teaching the way we were teaching for the last 20 years, the same notes every year, come and write on the blackboard, copy your classwork, do your homework, copy, go to your tuitions. We were ruining children's lives. I think that's the good thing that's happened is for the sake of the children, it's going to be a better future for them.
Thank you, Amul. Thank you so much. In fact, I think we've seen it in every sphere of life. The consumer benefits most when there is a lot of competition. And now with technology-based players, private players coming in to compete with the education system, we are all challenged and we're all going to try to do our best. Closing thoughts, Dr. Ashokan, from you?
Yes, I almost agree with Mr. Amul. So rightly said about the issues. I say that the personalization of education will become the norm nowadays because the learning adapts to each child instead of the child adapts to the school. So when we talk about the technology, all are talking about the highly sophisticated mechanisms and devices and everything. But I think child should understand the basics with the technology, and child has to work from the basic. Just like that, one example, if I say, regarding cultivation and the agricultural area, child should learn from the technologies of Israel with the help of the technology, and child himself or herself has to go to the farm for planting some sapling there with the technology. So that is the way the child will be able to understand what is to be done and how it is to be done. So the self-reliant society, if we need, each individual should be able to make something for the society, and they should not sit apart from the society, away from the society. They are the part of it. There comes with the NEP, local masters will be the vocational trainers of the school. That's the sentence which is given in that curriculum framework actually. The local masters of every field, be it the best farmer in the village, let him teach about cultivation, farming, and the season changes and how the seed should be given. So this kind of education which helps the child to learn the life, definitely coming back to the life skills. Thank you.
Thank you so much. What I'm most excited about is the fact that in future all stakeholders have to work together. So whether it's our promoters, whether it is teachers, whether it's parents, whether it is the government at the state, at the center, until all stakeholders really work hand in hand with each other, we are not going to see the kind of benefits that the future promises. And I think future proofing or not, future readiness is going to happen on the basis of these partnerships that we forge, and what better time than now. So thank you so much to all the panelists, and I really, I'm very sure that all the viewers have got a lot of deep insights based on our conversation today. Thank you so much, and thanks Elets for organizing this session, and look forward to the rest of the day and all the sessions.
Thank you very much, ma'am. Thank you, Dr. Pallavi, ma'am.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Elets.